Hello, hello, hello. Good morning. Good morning. It is June the 10th, 2020. June the 10th, 2020. And it's a big day for uh, the 12-step world, to name a few, for AA, for NA, for CA, for GA, which is Gamblers Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, Crystal Meth Anonymous, yes, Sex and Love Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, Emotions Anonymous. All of these programs, and literally well over 100 more, use the 12 steps of AA as the foundation of their recovery program. And on this day 85 years ago was day one for Dr. Bob. He was AA number 2. And it's just the story of how that happened is nothing short of a miracle. It really is. And Bob was a hopeless alcoholic. He was a doctor, a proctologist, actually. He was a doctor, and he had tried everything to sober up. He really did want to quit drinking. He just couldn't. He was even, belonged to spiritual groups. He did, he just could not stop drinking, and which is the plight of the alcoholic. And so Bill Wilson, who was kind of AA number 1, was in Dr. Bob's town, Akron, Ohio, and working on a deal. Bill had been a stockbroker, and he had gotten sober about 6 months before. A friend of his, Ebby T, had showed up at his door, and Ebby had been part of the Oxford group at the time, which was a Christian-based group that was trying also to help alcoholics. And because prior to this, there was no program. There was no, if you were alcoholic, the prognosis was terrible. I mean, it still is, but there was nowhere to go for us. There were no meetings. There were no, there was no answer. So Bill was in Akron, and he was working on a deal. He'd been a stockbroker. He was a stockbroker from New York, and he was trying to put a deal together in Akron with some guys, and it fell apart. And Bill was in danger of drinking. He really was. He was scared that he was going to drink. And he knew the only thing to keep him sober was to help another alcoholic, to try to give away what had happened to him. He'd had a spiritual experience. And his buddy, Silkworth, Dr. William Silkworth, had, advised him to explain the medical part of alcoholism. That Dr. Silkworth was the head doctor at a hospital in New York called the Downs Hospital, and had explained a lot of the detail of the medical side of alcoholism to Bill. And so Bill met with Bob. Bob was reluctant as heck. He only agreed to meet with Bill because his wife insisted, and that was not today, 85 years ago, but a couple of weeks ago, 85 years ago, and because Bob had one more bout in him, one more drinking bout in him, but he eventually recognized that Bill had an answer and a path, and so he had his last drink, I would think, yesterday, which would have been June the 9th, and today, June the 10th, was his first sober day. So a pretty big deal, because out of that, millions and millions and millions actually, of people have had a spiritual experience as a result of the 12 steps. And the whole image of the alcoholic and the addict has changed. You don't have to be in California for being in recovery to be cool. It's now being in recovery is cool everywhere, and it just is. It's and it doesn't really matter what sometimes the alcoholic in his hopeless state of mind and body will say. Oh, it doesn't work for me, hey, it doesn't work for me. And and millions don't make it. They die. Millions don't make it. It's not a good prognosis when discover when we self-diagnose, because really we can only self-diagnose to have success in the program. We self-diagnose that we have alcoholism. It's a tough. My job is to let newcomers know what a tough prognosis that is, what a tough diagnosis that is, because most of us don't make it. Truth, and as you can see, the epidemic that people are dropping off like flies right now with drug addiction, and so, but millions and millions do. And that's the good news. And families are reunited, and kids get their dads back and their mums back. And, it's just amazing what happens in recovery. It really is. So I'm excited to be part of it, And I came into the 12-step world about almost 40 years ago. And it doesn't mean that I, all of a sudden grew wings, because I didn't. I came from a background, a pretty rough background, and I have a buddy of mine who says, David, just scratch your skin a little bit, and underneath there's still the old drug dealer, and we recover, but many of us are lucky, blessed to have our lives, and still are. We're still, in a way, even though we've committed our lives, many of us, to helping others, we're still have that, that old rough character still in there. And so we, on a daily basis, need to get up and do our prayers and do our meditation and stay close to this God that we understand or don't understand. And so I'm going to read this is what I've been doing here, is reading the 24-hour day book. And I'm going to read it to you today, 24-hour day book. And it's pretty... this book was written in 1954. So about 19 years after Bill and Bob had, got together and the fellowship had begun, this book was written only 19 years later. Just imagine, there was enough of us at that time to warrant such a book, and millions of copies of this are out there. This one is I really do think is one of the originals. It is has a price tag in it for $1.50. That's right. It was $1.50 at the time, and I don't know where I found it, but it appeared in my life. June the 10th, thought for the day. If a man has some moral, religious, or spiritual training, he is a better prospect for AA. Wow. For the 12 steps, they're saying if a man, and mostly the language that they use is in the masculine, because at that time there were very few women in recovery. It's certainly changed now, but at that time there were very few women in recovery. Even in the beginning, when the book was written, this is my book, the Alcoholics Anonymous. When it was written, it is a story of 100 men and women. It says there was actually only one woman out of the 100 that was part of the original 100. So the language is mostly for men. If a man has some moral, religious, or spiritual training, he is a better prospect for the 12-step program. When he reaches the bottom, at his critical moment, when he's thoroughly licked, he turns instinctively to whatever decency is left in him. He calls upon whatever reserve of morality and faith are left down deep in his heart. That's the thought for the day. And the question is, have I had a spiritual experience? Meditation for today. The world wonders when it sees the man who can so unexpectedly draw large and... hang on a second, I can't see today. Let's turn that light on. Would you, Trevor, will you turn the big light on? I literally can't see today. My eyes are... Imagine. Hey, you guys. That will make a difference. It will, it will. Thank you. Let's start over again. His print is so small. Here we go. The world wonders when it sees the man who can so unexpectedly draw large and unsuspected sums of money from his bank for some emergency. But what the world has not seen are the countless small sums paid into that bank, earned by faithful work over a long time. And so it is with the bank with the Spirit. The world sees the man of faith make a sudden demand on God's stores of power, and the demand is met. The world does not see what the man has been putting in thanks and praise, in prayer and communion, in small good deeds done faithfully, steadily over the years. So I remember years ago when a spiritual teacher of mine said, David, you're spiritually bankrupt. And I also recognized when I first came into the 12-step world that I was spiritually bankrupt. And so I like his analogy of the spiritual bank account. Prayer for the day. I pray that I may keep making deposits in God's bank. I pray that in my hour of need, I may call upon these. So pretty exciting. For us, an exciting day, June the 10th. Dr. Bob is his day one in recovery and the very beginning of the fellowship of AA. And although it wasn't called that at the time, there was no steps. They were kind of using a bit of the program from the Oxford group of the day. And so it's amazing that from 85 years, that's a whisper in the time of the planet, in the time of man. It's a whisper. It's not even it's nothing to have had such an effect. When you look at some spiritual beliefs like Christianity, over 2,000 years old, and it's still finding its way. In a way, I believe it is leveling out. But the 12 steps, what we've done is everybody is welcome. Everybody is welcome. It doesn't matter what you believe, what your concept of a higher power or God is. Everybody, the door is open very wide. And there's, it doesn't matter how many times you have to come back to get it. We're very inclusive. And, we live under the principle of unconditional love. So it's pretty cool. Anyway, that's it. Love you guys. Have a super, super day. Life is good. You remember, I have encouraged you all to be ambassadors of love. The world needs love, and don't hide it away. Get out there and share, listen to people, find out how people are doing, encourage people, and show gratitude. Love, 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 compassion, my friend, understanding, acceptance, all part of being in the love vibe. Okay, love you so much. Thank you.